It's Fernando Ruiz Art. Hi everybody, it's Retro Review Day again here on the channel. And today we are looking at, we're going to continue. Last time we looked at X-Men #1, the original X-Men #1 from 1963. And today we're going to continue with the series. We're looking at X-Men #2. So that is the splash page from #2. There is the cover to #2. Again, I'm looking at a copy of the Marvel's Epic Collection trade, which reprints the early run of the X-Men. So there is the cover to #2. Nothing can stop the Vanisher. So the Vanisher is the villain of the issue. He's the main opponent here. Now the Vanisher, let's talk about the Vanisher. The Vanisher is one of these guys. His power is to teleport. That's it. He's mutant. He's got the mutant power to teleport. And he's basically out to just make money. He's out to grab some cash, to steal things for money, and that's it. He just wants to be rich. And he does have a little bit of the whole the mutant supremacy thing going on, and we'll talk about that. But his thing mainly it's a big cash grab. Now this is the Vanisher's first appearance. He's a from #2, so he's a long-lived X-Men villain. But he's never been a real heavy hitter. He's always been kind of a grunt guy. He's been a member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. I think he was in Factor 3. He's one of these guys who's usually on a team, rarely working alone. In fact, I think this issue might be the only time he works alone. This might be the only time he's going solo. And I know contemporary fans, post-90s fans will look at the Vanisher and they hear that his power is to teleport, and they'll say, that's it? That's all he can do? He's just like an evil Nightcrawler? But you got to keep in mind, this is the Marvel Universe was young here, and not everybody can teleport. So if you could teleport, you could do a lot. If you could teleport and you got a brain, there's a lot of damage you could do, especially if what you're after is just cash. I hear that same kind of critique being leveled at poor Angel. When younger fans learn, oh, all he could do is fly, and my response is, can you? He's got a power. We take it for granted in this day and age of the Marvel Universe being packed with people with powers that can do everything. Once upon a time, if you had powers, you were in the minority. Okay, so let's jump in. I love this splash page. This is a great splash. There's a couple of odd things worth noting here, but we've got the credit box here. Art-wise, we've got Kirby on art, inked by Paul Reinman. In terms of the art, it's pretty much like last issue. This is not the slick Kirby. It's interesting, and this isn't a knock on Paul Reinman, but it's interesting. This is 1963 when this issue came out. So around this time, the Fantastic Four is probably hitting its 20s. It's around issue 20 or so, maybe a little bit more than that. The art is much slicker over there, and it's starting to settle into a sort of consistency. But Kirby had, he had some really good inkers over there. Here, things are a little sketchy. I mean, you still got that nice Silver Age look, but things are, they aren't as solid as over on the FF. And again, it's not a knock on Paul Reinman. It is what it is. The art's still fun. It still has that nice Marvel Universe clunkiness, that early Marvel Universe clunkiness. And eventually, Reinman does take over the art himself, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But a couple of things to point out in this splash, as I mentioned before. Number one, the Beast is wearing gloves. That is clearly, most likely, a mistake. The Beast never wears gloves, and in fact, by the very next page, he's got no gloves. So that's one thing to note. The Beast has gloves. The other thing is that figure of the angel. That would be used. Eventually, that would be incorporated in future issues into the X-Men logo, and it would remain there, kind of making the angel a bit of the mascot of the team. I've for a while now, I've had kind of a theory that I think they were trying to push the Angel as sort of the breakout star of the X-Men. How far that went, we could debate, but I think the Angel got a lot of screen time. He also got to enjoy the very first guest appearance by an X-Man outside of the book, which was over in Iron Man. And that was fairly early on. So I don't know if anybody knows anything more about that. Please let me know in the comments below, or your thoughts on that theory. Am I just nuts? Okay, so we jump in now. The X-Men are being summoned by Professor X, as is often happening back then. Another oddity to point out. Normally, the Vanisher is pictured in green. For whatever reason, in this first appearance, he was decked out in red, and later on, in the inside of the book, it's kind of like a purplish red. But typically, he'd keep that costume, believe it or not, for many years, but it was mostly colored in green. Okay, so let's jump in. So the X-Men are being summoned, and I don't know where they are, but they're all scattered all over New York, and they're hustling to get back to the school, and they're in costume. They're all over New York in costume, and they're hustling. It's interesting to note, and this is the X-Men number 2. This is their second adventure, but they're popular enough to get mobbed. And here we see Angel being mobbed. And Angel was always depicted as the good-looking playboy of the group. And here he's getting mobbed by girls. How they could tell that he's good-looking with the mask on, I don't know, but they still want him. A lot of the X-Men's premise still hasn't been nailed down yet. Okay, and we'll see that. We'll see that in this issue. So the idea that the X-Men were feared and hated, that's not the case in this issue. In fact, if we remember at the end of the last issue, of issue 1, the X-Men are regarded as heroes. They'd saved that military base from Magneto, and they were considered heroes. And the X-Men said, if they ever needed them again, they'd be back. So the X-Men are really loved publicly at this point. And here we have Cyclops and Iceman. They see a construction crew about to be crushed by a fallen wall. Cyclops rather, disintegrates the wall, and they make friends. In order to get home, Iceman and Cyclops pay an ice cream truck to drive them right up to Xavier's school. Not the best way to keep a secret identity, but there you go. And in fact, even Iceman eats the guy's ice cream. All right. So they're called by Professor X, and Professor X clues them in on the Vanisher. Now, it's interesting, at this point, we do not have, there is no Cerebro. Okay, the mutant detecting machine still has not been developed. At this point, the professor himself is just detecting mutants. He's just detecting them with his brain. So he detected the Vanisher in the city, and he was tracking him all day. And the Vanisher, of course, like I said, he's just out for cash. So he's just out like pulling holdups and bank jobs. He's just like, and he's even packing heat. He's not fooling around. He's got a gun. Again, we we take it for granted that these guys have more offensive powers, but hey, if you're in a brawl and all you could do is teleport, if you want to stick around and not just beam away, you pack heat. So Vanisher disappears. They can't get him. So the professor pretty much says, it's up to them, the X-Men, to take him down. And so there's some training going on. As with issue 1, these training sessions are always a nice way. And remember, this is very early on in the series. It's only issue 2. It's a good way to introduce the team to your audience. You get to showcase each member. You get to show off what they can do. At this point, since we're looking at the Beast here, we still don't get the brainy Beast, although he does state that's because I'm smarter than the others, huh? So we get an inkling that the Beast has more. There's more to him than we've seen so far, but he's still not the big words using Beast. Okay, so the Vanisher, he's out there. He's just doing a whole crime wave, and he's wanted by the police now because he's just out there ripping off everybody, and he is so prolific as a criminal that he's just adored by the underworld. And here we see he's got this whole get together with mobsters and criminals, and yeah, that's how they looked back in 1963 in comics. They looked like middle-aged guys in suits. And it's interesting, the Vanisher goes into a whole spiel about how he's a mutant and superior to all these, to ordinary Homo sapiens. And all these guys, they don't care. They're still in his camp. They're still backing him because he's gonna make them rich. So they love him. They love the Vanisher. Now it's interesting that Professor X gets contacted by Special FBI Agent Fred Duncan. Fred Duncan seems to be Professor X's guy in the government. And in fact, even Professor X has equipped him with this funky headband that allows him to contact the professor. So Fred Duncan wants to bring the X-Men in on this whole Vanisher crime wave. And he even deploys this crazy helicopter to ferry the X-Men down to Washington, D.C. So here the X-Men are really operating as government agents. So the Vanisher, he's out, he's stealing government plans from the Pentagon. So he's making a getaway with these plans. The X-Men try to stop him. They can't do it. He gets away from him. It's interesting to note now he's also got a gas gun that he uses to knock out Marvel Girl. But he makes a getaway, making the X-Men really frustrated and feeling foolish. They do get to have a whole other face-off with Vanisher. And now we get to one of the issues, one of the trappings that happens with the X-Men when you have a character like Professor X. And what ultimately happens is Professor X challenges the Vanisher. Vanisher just mocks him because he just thinks Professor X is this poor handicapped guy who can't do anything to him. And then Professor X just shuts down the Vanisher's brain. He just gives him total amnesia, and he doesn't even remember that he's got powers. So, and that that sets up a situation where we're setting up the professor to be kind of a little too powerful to be on this team, and we've seen that be a problem, even in the movies, even in the recent movies. What do you need the rest of the team for if Professor X can just wheel in and just literally turn off the bad guy? So then all that's left is for the X-Men to round up the Vanisher's gang of mobsters, which they do very handily. And the X-Men are heroes, once again. Wraps up. I love this issue. I really do. My thoughts on the issue, it's great. It's the pacing, the amount of story that you get where you're introduced to a villain, you're introduced to his whole crime wave and his effect on the populace, on the city. In fact, the fact that he becomes a threat to national security, and he defeats the X-Men, and then the X-Men turn around and they defeat him, and all this is in one issue. That amount of story is just phenomenal. So it's a fun read once again. The Vanisher, is he a pushover? Yeah, but again, if you're not prepared to fight a guy who could teleport, that one power is gonna, it's gonna be, there's a lot he could do with it. So, and the Vanisher was a fun, he could only teleport, but he's a fun villain in this. He was, larger than life, big plans. He was just a lot of fun. So once again, a really fun story-packed issue. Yeah, the art, not could be a little slicker, a little more consistent in places. But overall, a real solid, entertaining book. The X-Men, we see them working as a team. Their personalities still haven't emerged, but we're seeing traces. So I give this issue a 4, a solid 4, because it's just so fun. Now, coming up is one of my favorite issues of the X-Men. X-Men number 3, the first appearance of one of my favorite villains, the Blob. Make sure you come back, and I love this issue so much, I'm not going to hold off too long before I dive into this, but make sure you catch this, because this issue is really a pivotal issue in X-Men history. You don't hear that a lot, but it really is. We really start seeing the X-Men behaving more like the X-Men that we know. And we start seeing the premise of the X-Men really start to come together. So make sure you come back for this one, because this is going to be a fun one. All right, so that's it. Tell me, please tell me what you thought. Tell me your thoughts on X-Men number 2, your thoughts on the Vanisher. Tell me if you enjoy these retro reviews, and your thoughts and suggestions in the comments below. So thanks a lot, everybody. I hope you'll subscribe, and I hope you'll come back next time. Bye-bye, everybody. And don't forget to click like. See you next time.